Jerome Powell just announced that there is zero net job creation in the private market, but it's what he didn't say that I think is rather interesting. The reality, guys, is this shouldn't be a surprise for you. If you've been subscribed to the channel, if you've been following the content 6 days a week, you understand the companies aren't hiring right now. This is not a surprise. Heck, companies have been telling us. They've been going public saying we're not hiring. Why? Because they're using AI to replace humans in a lot of roles. And, that's obviously kind of this like dirty secret that, they kind of want you to know, but they also don't want you to acknowledge at the same time. It's rather interesting. Anyway, we're going to talk about that today. I do want to just highlight that they are not going to be adjusting interest rates. Why? Because they are concerned about inflation. And, Powell, of course, took the moment to throw a little bit of shade over at Trump, saying that tariffs are holding the inflation up. He said that their target is 2% inflation. We're stuck at around 3%. He said, quote, some big chunk of that, between half and 3/4, is actually tariffs. So we're looking for progress on that. He was asked questions during the press conference and was very non-definitive on things. And, just to back up Jerome a bit, very volatile time. It's really hard to predict what's going to happen between, tariffs, wars, AI. I mean, there's just so much that's happening right now. So, I'll give him some credit there. He how can you predict everything? You can't. But one of the things he kept saying was, I'm not sure. We have to wait. We have to find out. And again, just throwing a little bit of shade at Trump, kind of blaming him for the tariffs. He kind of mentioned during the press conference that, the U.S. economy is actually doing pretty good. It's doing pretty good. We're pretty happy with it. But if it wasn't for them tariffs, we'd be okay. He didn't say it exactly like that, but it's kind of the implication. Kind of funny. It's basically life is high school, guys. Wherever you are at in life, you have to understand that high school doesn't end after high school. You're just older high school kids. It's just kind of funny how it plays out like that. Anyway, Powell also mentioned that he and the rest of the Fed were concerned about energy prices fueling higher inflation due to the war in Iran. And, you've probably seen that oil prices have fluctuated quite a bit, very volatile. Who knows what's going to happen over there? Only God knows. At any rate, he said, quote, we just don't know how big this will be and how long it lasts. It may or may not be something that really makes a big imprint on the U.S. economy. We're just going to have to wait and see. And again, he repeated this kind of phrase a lot. We don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. Quite frankly, again, volatile time, but it makes me wonder if, can we just have AI manage this? Can we have AI just make these decisions? I'm sure they are using some AI, but he's so non-definitive. It just makes me wonder what he actually can do. And we'll get back to the minute. And I was kind of thinking back. You probably remember a few years ago when COVID-19 shut down the entire world. Do you remember when that happened? Yeah, I do. I will never forget. Very angry. I'm not going to go off the rails here. However, one thing that you may have forgotten was how much money was pumped into the economy. They pumped trillions and trillions. The Federal Reserve pumped trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars into the economy. And we were told it wouldn't affect inflation. We'd be fine. We were told that it was going to be transitory. We were told that it wouldn't impact our wallets. And at the time I was like, what are we talking about? In 2020, they pumped $3.3 trillion into the economy, okay? And they said, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. Guys, that was 20% of every dollar. That was 20% of every dollar that you saw in 2020. 20% of them were injected that year. It's completely absurd. And I remember posting about it on social media at the time saying, hey guys, I don't know about this. This seems like it's probably going to devalue. It's probably gonna be like a huge tax on the middle class and the lower class. It feels like this is probably not a good thing. And I just remember people at the time were like, no, it's a good thing. You don't know what you're talking about. It's M1, M2 money supply. And here we are a few years later and inflation is not gone. Again, I bring this up because I have to ask and, cover your ears if you're a child. I sometimes feel like these people don't know what the hell they're talking about. I really get that feeling. I don't know if you feel that way. If you can type it in the comments below if you think that people, I'm not saying Jerome Powell is stupid, but I sometimes I wonder if he knows what the hell he's talking about. I got to say, Trump, all these people, sometimes I just think they don't know what the hell they're talking about. I'm sorry. Anyway, I digress. The big story here, guys, was jobs. And, that is my biggest concern when it comes to AI and the revolution that's taking place right before us. Again, I'm using AI all the time, and I'll talk a little bit about that here today, but the big story for me was jobs. And they overall seem okay with the unemployment rate. We're at about 4.4% unemployment. It's moving a little bit, but they seem to be like, okay, this is a safe, normalish number. But the quote that really got me, the quote that really piqued my ears, and Henry the Great in the comments, I think he had noted this, was on the show yesterday. By the way, guys, when you leave comments on the show, when you watch and you engage and you refer people, it really helps educate me and highlight stories that are big. Some of the most popular videos on the channel are videos that were inspired or recommended by viewers like you. So keep those recommendations coming. Anyway, the quote from Jerome that really got my spider senses tingling was this quote. He said, quote, "Effectively, there's zero net job creation in the private sector," unquote. That to me got my attention because, as you and I both know, there's a lot of people getting laid off right now. We're covering it just about every day. There's a company that's announcing a major layoff. And if people are getting laid off, but there's new jobs not being created, what are these people doing? What are they doing? Now, he kind of, he shifts the narrative a little bit, saying that, quote, "But actually, that looks like that's about what the economy needs in regards to no jobs being created in the private sector." And he says, quote, "But actually, that looks like that's about what the economy needs in terms of dealing with very, very low, non-existent really, growth in the labor force, which of course we've never had in our history." Again, kind of throwing a little bit of this back at Trump, saying, hey, we're not bringing in immigrants right now. We're removing immigrants from the country. And, because this is happening, well, that's why the new jobs aren't being created. And maybe there is some truth to that. It's kind of hard to tell. But in any event, that's what he says, maybe. But I got to kind of push back on that just a little bit, because we covered a couple months ago, about a month and a half ago, I'll post a link to it here. January, guys, January layoffs were a 17-year high. Companies, UPS, Amazon, Meta, they are firing tens of thousands of employees. I mean, Oracle, tens of thousands of employees. I mean, we're seeing tons and tons of people being laid off. And by the way, I've covered this, and just I'm going to keep punching this home. When these companies go through major layoffs, they have to cite the reason for their layoffs. We are now at a point where 10% of layoffs are directly attributed to AI. They're saying, we are going to use AI, we're laying off 10%. That is absolutely happening, okay? And you might say, oh, they're just doing that to bolster stock or whatever. I get what you're saying. But they're still doing it. And they're still announcing that it's due to AI. So the other thing that Powell noted here, which again is clearly obvious, I've been kind of punching home here, is, quote, "Labor demand has clearly softened as well." And this is the thing that he did not say. It's the quiet part that I'm going to say out loud. We know it's because of artificial intelligence. We know it's because companies are cutting out the bottom rung of the career ladder. You graduate from, that's why college unemployment rates are so high, because people are graduating from college, they're trying to get into a field, and they can't find jobs. Just a few weeks ago, I'll post a link to this video here. It's been very, very popular. We talked about how AI is replacing attorney jobs, okay? And what's happening there is it's not replacing like the attorney that you would go and sit down with, who's a partner at the practice, he's been there for 20 years. No. It's taking out the paralegals and the new legal graduates, the new law graduates who are trying to get their foot in the door. They don't need them anymore because the attorneys are using AI to serve a lot of those functions. And this is the same thing that's happening across every industry, guys. It's happening everywhere. The demand for those entry-level positions is gone. And this is kind of a juxtaposition of personally what I thought was going to happen with AI. Going back a year or two, my expectation was it was actually going to replace the experts, because everyone could be a beginner, and and you wouldn't need an attorney because you could just use ChatGPT to create a legal contract, for example. And I'm not saying that you can't, but what I am saying is that this AI can write some wonky stuff. It hallucinates, it makes stuff up. When I'm doing research for the show, sometimes it'll make fake data and fake citations, and I double check and I put links and references in the comments below. So what's actually happened is it's not replacing the experts in the field, it's replacing the beginners in the fields. So the career ladder has been chopped. And that's gonna be a problem that we're gonna see play out over the next 10 to 20 years, is, well, if you're not training new talent, how do you get experts? Because these young kids and these newbies aren't getting a chance. We know at the beginning of the day, he did not mention AI, but we know that AI is a primary factor in the softening of the labor growth. Now, but listen, guys, I know, it sounds like the end. No, it's not all doom and gloom, boys. It's not all doom and gloom, because the reality is that some of the companies that are end up hiring people back, Block, who we covered in a video a couple days ago, post a link to it here, announced that they were going to be firing 4,000 people, but they recognized that they maybe went too hard and are hiring people back. And this reminds us of a story that we had last year where we talked about Klarna firing half their customer service staff, saw the quality control drop, and ended up hiring people back. So by the way, if you get fired, don't just start flicking your boss and throwing stuff around. Just take it with some grace. You never know what's gonna happen on the back end. The other thing that I'll point out here is that in some cases, people that are being laid off are not being hired back as employees, but being hired back as independent contractors. And the reason for this is it's a lot cheaper, it's a lot more efficient for the employer themselves. They don't have to pay severance or cover healthcare or do matches on 401ks. It's less expensive for them. However, there are some advantages being I've been a 1099 contractor for about 5 years now, maybe more. And, business, managing dozens of different employees and subcontractors over the years. But regardless, there's some tax advantages. There's things that you can write off. There's ways to navigate that so that you can come out on top. Maybe I'll talk about that in more detail sometime. But the point here is that just because you get fired doesn't mean, it's a tough labor market out there. It's tough to get hired back, but don't go burning bridges. At least for me, the idea here is keep your relationships warm. And I touch on this just about every video I talk about this. The relationships with humans that you have matter. They are going to matter even more moving forward. And we just guys, just like Jerome Powell said, we don't know a lot. We really don't know what jobs are actually going to be needed in the future. There's just all new sets of problems that are being created. AI is solving a lot of old problems, but it's creating a lot of new problems. So the reality I think that I'm living through, and that if you're watching this channel, you're living through, is that we need to learn how to solve new problems. We need to use tools, we need to watch the market, we need to keep relationships warm so we can find new problems to solve. The first business that I really got deep in was podcast production, and I don't do that anymore because I found different, better problems to solve, which helped me to make more money. Last year was the best year that I've had yet from a business standpoint, most profitable year. And I expect that this year will be even better. Why? Because I'm finding new, interesting problems to solve. And right now, a lot of that revolves around Claude and Claude Agentics, Claude Cowork, integrations of Claude into all these other softwares. It's actually blowing my mind. I know a bunch of you guys have dinged me and pinged me and asked for a workshop on that. Probably coming soon. When I'm ready, when I've got a good curriculum laid out and I really feel like I can lay it down, that will come. But yeah, again, this all comes down to what's the next problem? What's the new problem? How are we using these tools? How are we getting better? That's at least where my head is at. Right now, just a quick example. Just this week, I used Claude Cowork personally to pull data for a client. We were able to integrate it with all of the tech stack, pull data, add spreadsheets, analyze tons and tons of data sets, what's working, what's not working. We use it, and I'm in the marketing side, and so I'm responsible for customer acquisition costs. We're assessing Meta ads, Google ads, we're assessing social media posts, open rates, click-through rates, subscription conversions, all this stuff, and we're able to leverage that data to write better blogs, social media posts, news articles, press releases, scripts, intros, hooks. And by doing that, by training it that way, I'm able to easily manage the group of about 5, 6, 7, 8 people. There's different people doing different things within the org, and use the AI to really fuel them and give them what they need to be cohesive and be more effective. And then at the end of the month, at least the plan, is we're gonna take all of that new data from all of the new content, and we're gonna put it right back through the ringer to continue to iterate and improve. So anyway, I'm excited about that, I'm interested about it, so I figured I would share that here. Anyway, at the end of the day, new jobs aren't being created. And, if you're on the job market, that's obviously not great. If you have a job, if you have a career and you're worried about what the future looks like, that's probably doesn't sound too great. But I mean, at the end of the day, guys, when I listen to Powell, I kind of question that any of these guys know what the hell they're talking about. I really don't. They kept saying, we don't know. We have to wait and see. It takes time. And what I understand, what I realize is these are not the guys that are going to save us. If you're waiting for a politician or one of these economists or Scientologists or whoever the heck to save you, I would think again. For me as a Christian, I got faith in God that he's got me. And as my old pastor used to say, I trust that God has me, but I work like I am in control. And that's, I think, the message here. Take action. Be your own man. If you want relevancy, respect, and secure financial freedom, if you want financial freedom, a financial future, you got to take the action. So keep learning, keep improving, keep paying attention, keep subscribing to the channel. And I'll catch you in the next video. If you liked today's video, definitely watch yesterday's video where I kind of go through some more specifics on how I'm using AI and some of the learnings I had at a big networking event at church. Talk to a bunch of people. Go watch the video. You'll check it. You can see it here. I'll see you there. Peace.